So, this is part B of the Khoodeelaar television channel, broadcasting under the banner of Baby Angel Geronimo. The Baby Angel Geronimo editions of Khoodeelaar television channel being broadcast only on the internet, not on satellite, not on terrestrial, not on cable platforms. This part we shall be going deeper into the report that has been published on the front page of the Sunday Times, continuing on page 2, about the fact that Tony Bilaya, the war criminal, has received undisclosed sums of money through the bogus thing called the Tony Blair Institute from the Saudi regime, effectively controlled by the 37-year-old Mohammed bin Salman. So, every paragraph is significant in the Sunday Times piece about Tony Bilaya. What a complete falsehood. Blair Institute, what the fuck? The criminal disguising himself as an institute. Blair Institute kept advising Saudi government after Khashoggi's murder. Gabriel Pogrand and Harry York. Tony Blair's institute continued to advise the government of Saudi Arabia after the murder of the dissident journalist Jamal Khashoggi, and still receives money from the Gulf Kingdom. The former Prime Minister's organization has been helping to craft Vision 2030, the modernization program spearheaded by, well, this is within a quotation mark where I'm having to read, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for the past 6 years. The multi-million pound partnership began in late 2017. Now, even they are admitting it's multi-million. One in a previously undisclosed agreement, Blair's Institute for Global Change. What the fuck? Seconded staff to work at the Saudi Ministry of Information and Culture. So effectively, Tony Bilaya was serving, delivering, supplying British operatives for the so-called Saudi government. Propaganda, brainwashing. As part of the year-long contract, Blair's consultants advised Saudi officials on the policy and objective of the reform program, according to his spokesman. In October 2018, during the deal's final months, the prince sparked international condemnation after approving the assassination of Khashoggi. The Washington Post columnist was coaxed into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, in Turkey, before being murdered. His body was dismembered. After the killing, Blair, 70, considered whether to suspend ties with Prince Mohammed, 37, and the kingdom at large, with a number of senior staff suggesting there were reputational and ethical grounds to do so. However, Blair feared he would lose influence with the prince. According to a rare statement from Blair's office given to the Sunday Times, Blair took the view then and remains strongly of the view now that staying engaged there is justified. Despite the terrible crime in question. Well, how many crimes constitute one crime? According to a rare statement from his office given to the Sunday Times, Beliar took the view then and remains strongly of the view now that staying engaged there is justified despite the terrible crime in question. Blair based his view on the immense and positive importance of the Crown Prince's reforms and the country's strategic importance to the West. There is no hiding the fact that the Crusaders have taken over the Saudis. Well, they have aggravated the grip on what is called Saudi Arabia. Blair's institution duly completed the contract at the Ministry of Information, which his spokesman said was not renewed. The organization has since entered into separate deals with the Saudi state. No senior staff or board member was opposed to this decision. But naturally, there were anxieties expressed, as you would expect. They said of the continuing relationship, it is with the Saudi government, not a Saudi company. Asked why Beliar Institute had disclosed the contract, they said Tony Beliar has publicly supported the modernization program on several occasions. We don't list the countries we work in. He would not divulge the amount of money the Beliar Institute received from the kingdom, stating, we don't disclose individual amounts. How would they disclose individual amounts, which is millions? The disclosure is likely to reignite scrutiny of Blair's activities since leaving office. Now, this is only a very short paragraph, but this is the center of the thing. The war criminals' activities since leaving office should have been the main area of investigation since he left in 2007. At the time of Khashoggi's murder, Well, they say death, but I'm saying murder. The former Labour leader had only recently created his non profit after years of criticism for failing to separate his role as a Middle Eastern peace envoy from his lucrative consultancy work at the Tony Blair Associates, through which he advised controversial leaders, including the autocratic president of Kazakhstan and Egypt. We had also lobbied, he had also lobbied for Petra Saudi, a Saudi owned oil company founded by a son of King Abdullah. In 2006, while still in office, Bilayar faced controversy after blocking a serious fraud office investigation into alleged corruption in the multi billion pound arms deal between British aerospace systems and Saudi Arabia. The BAE is at the heart of the next generation fighter plane deal between the United Kingdom, Italy, and Japan, which Riyadh is trying to muscle in on. Details of the Saudi deal will also renew interest in Tony Blair's Institute, which, according to its website, helps political leaders build open, inclusive, and prosperous societies in an increasingly interconnected world. Now, this thug, this criminal, war criminal, has been allowed to operate with impunity. And look at who his clients have been and what he has been up to. Hardly anything is disclosed, and hardly any question has been raised by any member of parliament, or indeed for that matter, any newspaper, any magazine. If you compare Tony Blair's crimes and criminal involvement, insider dealings, and selling the insider knowledge of money that are involved. I mean, this is too long a piece for reading because it's not entertaining, it's distressing and offensive. That is the reason I've stopped reading the rest of it. Now, since being replaced by Gordon Brown, Tony Blair has become a multi-billionaire. It is amazing, isn't it, that nobody has been asking questions as to what are the contents of what his consultation has been. Has he been selling informal access to the UK state as well as other states in return for the huge hundreds of millions of pounds that he has been obviously receiving. Egypt's murderer, President Sisi, and Kazakhstan's dictator criminal. These are not, by any definition, anything to do with transparency. They are not transparent and they are not accountable. And if you look at the behavior of these war criminals up to today, so if you look at the, let's say, his active operational kind of career since leaving in 2007. 2007, 2017 is 10 years, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 16 years. For 16 years, he has been operating with impunity. How much damage he has done to whatever democratic transparency movements that have been simultaneously active in those regions where he has been supporting the fascists and the still not certain died. And these people, whatever country of origin they are from, are only trying to escape the repression and the lack of civil liberties in their countries of origin. And there is no reference to the direct involvement of Tony Blair in creating and perpetuating those states of uncertainty and hunger in those countries which are being left by the people risking their lives. Although there is news that these people have been desperate, the news coverage, even in the Sunday Times, does not connect the various things that are responsible for the desperation, especially the role of the United Kingdom state, which has been distorted and twisted by successive regimes to defy the obligations that the United Kingdom as a signatory country has been under due to the participation in the various treaties. Maximum, maximum, and maximum Tony Blair, the colluder with the multi-billion pound repressive operations in the countries many of the migrants are fleeing. And there is no explanation as to what exemption there is or derogation that possibly could be from the duties to safeguard these people. And again, there is no reference, not only in the newspapers and the media, there is no reference in the television, broadcasting, radio, nor is there any reference in the so called House of Commons. Regardless of what party they are members of, members of the British Parliament are maintaining perpetual silence, except saying that they're shocked, they're outraged, and in this context, in terms of the time, they're blaming the Conservatives. But the policy position, the strategy of the Labour Party would not be fundamentally different. And despite the fact that there are other political parties who have very small number, but they have members of parliament in the House of Commons currently, there is no significant expression of concern by any member of parliament that actually recognizes the United Kingdom's treaty obligations. And there is no question of the United Kingdom government being the International Human Rights Court at The Hague. Whereas Gordon Brown, who was a crafty liar, as corrupt, as dishonest, as racist as Tony Blair, he has been making absolutely scandalous stunt by saying that the Taliban of Afghanistan should be tried at the International Human Rights Court for their policy of opposing women, misogyny. Gordon Brown, the criminal, colluded with the mass murderer Tony Blair when Tony Blair was colluding for 7 he didn't those of the cabinet. There was nothing that stopped Gordon Brown from condemning either the collusion by Blair with G.W. Bush in sanctioning the multiple aggression war on Iran. David Kelly, the scientist, the weapons investigator who was a capable scientist who was investigating Tony Blair's lie that Saddam Hussein's regime had possession of secret shortly after the identity of the investigator David Kelly was established, he, a perfectly healthy person, was found dead in a forest not far from his home. It's like the Welsh born private investigative journalist Daniel Morgan, who was murdered in a South London pub 37 years ago, and whose murder was hushed up by the London Metropolitan Police. To the point that the Metropolitan Police, as represented by current Commissioner Rowley, publicly staged an apology to the family and publicly accepted the failures and failings of the London Metropolitan Police, and a token sum of £1 million was paid to Daniel Morgan's bereaved family relations. The London morning free giveaway called the Metro, controlled by the Daily Mail, ran a story completely wrong about Daniel Morgan, saying that it was justice for Daniel Morgan, this £1 million. What a travesty and twisting of language and concepts. Even if the London Metropolitan Police paid £100 million or £1 billion, Daniel Morgan would not be experiencing any justice whatsoever. So it shows the crassness, the length of stupidity that dominates the so called British press. Completely, absolutely, unacceptably, unsustainably stupid. So the piece on the front page of the Sunday Times today about Tony Blair, headed Blair Institute kept advising Saudi government after Khashoggi's murder. This is not a sustainable, substantially truthful item at all, because it doesn't talk about the, as I said, the obligations, the United Kingdom's obligations under the dozens of treaties that it is a signatory to. And especially, it doesn't raise the question as to what gave the war criminal the impunity to operate almost an industry. What he has been doing in Kazakhstan, in Egypt, in Saudi Arabia, is selling secrets. Secrets that he alone would have had access to as the incumbent in the post of Prime Minister from May 1997 until 2007 when he left. And there is no suggestion anywhere that he should not have been allowed to do business at all, full stop, let alone on that scale. Now, if we take the narrative to the so called Muslim organizations, not confining this to Saudi Arabia, but Muslims generally, including the Iranians, can anyone, and I'm raising this question addressing anyone who is watching this, whenever they will be watching this, although I'm broadcasting this world exclusive original diagnostic analysis at 06:43 GMT on Sunday, the 13th of August 2023. Can anyone find anywhere, in any language on the face of the earth, any evidence that the so called Muslims, either Muslim states, forget about the likes of the Kazakhs and the Egyptian ICC, the ordinary Muslims across the world that are parts of the states in Muslim majority countries, is there any of them raising questions as to the war criminal at large, the crusader at large, Tony Blair? Because not only has he been selling secrets, prostituting himself to these select regimes of gangsters and thugs and fascists, he is at the same time also repeatedly surfacing on the so called British domestic political scene and proactively attacking attacking the Labour Party's founding aims and objects, attacking the Democrats within the United Kingdom, and condemning them regardless, and giving support to the criminal Keir Starmer. And nobody is asking the question as to who ever, under what law or constitution or the convention, allowed Tony Blair the license, the freedom to operate as the gangster who has been responsible for creating the kind of havoc, desperation, panic among millions of people across the continents of Africa and Asia. What is it that stops these so called journalists from asking this question? And the fact that they are not asking the question is proof that they're working together And there are 2 pages spread. 2 pages spread in the Sunday Times, which is twice the size of twice or even bigger than twice the size of a tabloid. So on pages 4 and 5, 2-page spread under migration. And the heading has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 words. There could be more bodies, but smugglers will carry on. Now, of course, this is the narrative. This is the narrative that Suella Ibila Cruella Fernandez and Rishi Sunak and others would want to promote, which is that it is the smugglers who are to blame for the massacre, the latest massacre of the migrants in the sea. Well, that is the last thing that is responsible. Smugglers only come into the scene when the desperate people are left smugglers could not force these people to take their lives at risk, put their lives at risk. So the question must be, how many of the people who were on the particular boat this time had no alternative but to do that? And had they been given the chance to use legal routes to seek refuge, whether it's United Kingdom or any other Western countries, if they were given the legal routes, would these victims of the massacre still have risked their lives? In the 2-page spread, there is no mention of the United Nations failures at all. There's this piece by Louise Callahan, and the question at the top of her piece: what made these Afghans board the boat? An alchemy of need and opportunity. An alchemy of need and opportunity And the question that she asks is an ignorant question. It's an obvious question, but it's an ignorant question because there has been another massacre. And when there has been another massacre, the most immediate urgent question is, how is it that the causers of the massacres are allowed to get away? And how to hold these massacre causers to account? That is the question. Not the smugglers. And there is this piece that is also blaming the mayor, a French mayor near the crossing spot, fears gangs are trying to get as many migrants as possible across the channel before the weather breaks. Of course, gangs are doing that. But if there are no takers of this opportunity to cross the channel illegally by boats, if there were no need because there were legal routes, the gangs would not be doing any business. So, how many other massacres must happen before the Sunday Times and the likes of them stop lying? Stop lying, the Conservative government in the United Kingdom, and stop lying for the racists at various points of decision making in the UK government. Because what is happening with the massacres, without any doubt, is that a very clear threat, terrorizing threat, is being forced into the narrative, and people are being made to feel very, 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 very scared indeed. And what they mention of the inactive agencies of the United Nations, there will be no different approach even after these massacres. And there is no sign that any member of parliament, as I was saying earlier, from any party or no party, for example, the likes of Diana Abbott, they don't belong to any party. So there is nothing that is coming from any of these people. And what Diana Abbott has got in the news about when she made the comment, which she has since deactivated, about the conservative fascist Leanderthal, as the private lie calls him, Leanderthal, was that he said to the migrants, and quoting him, fuck off to France. What Diana was to repeat his crass, stupid, backward Neanderthal stupidity back at him. So instead of accusing him of being backward and stupid and crass and cruel and lacking compassion, they latched on and they had a go at Diane Abbott for that one. Now, Diane Abbott on that occasion did not invent that phrase. She did not say it. She only threw it back at him out of disgust. That the criminality, insensitivity, nastiness in his utterance should be seen in the light of this massacre that happened so soon after his disgusting, racist, cruel, unkind words against the likely victims. And there is another excuse for the criminals called ministers. What the fuck is that word minister supposed to mean? Is it supposed to mean that somebody who is called a minister, by that fact, is to be treated as intellectually so superior, so knowledgeable about the issues at hand, that they must be referred to with reverence? But the reality is that the minister is no different from a non-minister when it comes to the intellect, the ability to understand right and wrong. And even if they were not kept in the dark about the Legionella virus, what difference would they make? What difference would they make? Somebody who is called a minister and has the human name of Robert Jenrick is a disgrace. Robert Jenrick is as bad, as disgraceful, as scandalous, as corrupt, as intent on causing hardship to the vulnerable as is Lee Anderton, as is Suela Ibila Cruella Fernandez. So, although there are significant amounts of space, say, given in the Sunday Times to this massacre, they are not calling it massacre, but that's what it is. Substantially, there is nothing that they have published or admitted as being really the cause for the massacre. Because they are colluding with the government, with the regime, fronted by Rishi Sunak, and operationally fronted by Suela Ibila Cruella Fernandez. There is a denial of the truth in the papers about everything. Denial about the war criminal, Tony Blair, who has been allowed to run an industrial scale degeneration program, creating problems across the two continents for 17 years. And there is no call for his being tried. Instead, Gordon Brown is calling for the Taliban to be tried for misogyny at the International Court of Human Rights in The Hague. Of course, Gordon Brown is trying to stay in the news. There is no chance in hell of the Taliban to be brought for trial at The Hague for sexism. Fuck Gordon Brown, the racist liar. The opportunist criminal who went along with all the war criminality by Tony Blair in order that he, Gordon Brown, would still remain the prime successor to take over the post as Prime Minister after Tony Blair left. So that was Gordon Ghastly Liar Brown being opportunistic, complicit with massacre and genocide. We shall be talking more in the next editions whenever we broadcast the next edition. This has been 52 minutes and we are ending this at 0703 hours, 0704 hours GMT on Sunday, the 13th of August 2023.